Hey y'all, I'm Hope, and today I'm wrapping up everything that I read in April, which turned out to be a pretty sparse reading month for me. So April was the month that I had a bunch of research papers due for the end of the spring semester. I had one due at the very beginning of the month, and another one due at the very end of the month, and that one kicked my ass. I got it turned in though, but it did take a lot of time and effort on that one. So I didn't read very much, but I did read like a little bit. I slipped a few things in here and there as I had the time. The first thing that I read this month was Christina Rossetti's Goblin Market and Other Poems, which I read for one of my classes, and I've already talked about this one in my mid-month wrap-up, so I'll link that up in the cards above and in the description below in case you want to go check that out. But very short version of my thoughts, I gave this like 3 stars. It was fine. I'm not a poetry person, so it wasn't really anything that stuck out to me. In the latter half of the month, the next thing I read was The Helios Syndrome by Vivian Shaw, and I absolutely loved this. This is a very short novella. I think it's about 100 pages, and it follows Devin Stacy, who is a freelance necromancer working for the National Transportation Safety Board, I think. The NTSB, I believe is the acronym. And he's basically helping to locate planes that have crashed when they've like crashed somewhere that's hard to get to, and they're having trouble finding the pieces or finding like the black boxes that they need to figure out what happened. He's called in to help them kind of find things and figure out what happened to the planes. And so he gets called in on this case where a plane crashes in the ocean and the black boxes are missing. And so he's called in on that case, and then things kind of spiral from there. At the same time, there's a previous case that seems to have gotten him a little bit haunted by a deceased plane pilot. And that kind of all comes together in a really fun way. So I really enjoyed this. It very much blends like urban fantasy and mystery and horror all together in a way that I found really fun. I was really enjoying all of the different elements, and I felt like they fit together really well. And I really like Devin Stacy as a main character because he's kind of like snarky, and he's also very practical, which was, I think, a fun combination. He's like very funny. He says a lot of very funny things, but also he's very practical about like, what do I need to do next? How do I do my job? And I really enjoyed following him for that reason. I also really like his dynamic with the leader of the team that he's working with. There's this guy named Wayne Dooley, and their dynamic and the way they play off each other, because they have very different senses of humor, was really entertaining. And I really liked that like character relationship and the way that it kind of grew over the course of the book. Even though it was very short, it had some really fun development. And I can't say a whole lot about the plot of this one just because it is so short. And I think that it does a really interesting thing where it kind of veers off in a direction you're not expecting. So I think this is one that I can like really highly recommend. And it was just an absolute blast to read. I read the whole thing across almost one day, I guess. It was just one evening, except that it was like 2 in the morning and I needed to go to bed. So I ended up reading like the last 15 pages or something the next day. But yeah, this was tons of fun and I tore through it. It was just a really good, entertaining read. I would also absolutely read like an entire novel following these characters set in this version of the world because I thought it was just so much fun. So the last thing that I read in April was Jujutsu Kaisen Volume 1, which is a manga series I've been wanting to try because I know a lot of people really like this. I've seen a lot of people like cosplaying the characters. I know there's an anime for it that's really popular, so I'd just heard so much about this and I thought it would be fun to try it. So the other day I was at Barnes & Noble and I picked up a copy of this on a whim, this first volume, and I don't regret this at all. This was a ton of fun. It's a very strange story, and it takes a little bit of time to kind of get to grips with what's going on, but I think this is just really entertaining. Like the previous book, this was just an absolute blast to read, and I had so much fun with it. I ended up giving this one 4 stars because I think the ending escalates things a little bit too quickly. There's, sequential chapters, and then there's a chapter that kind of jumps ahead in time, and I feel like we're missing some development in between those that would make the last chapter kind of hit more substantially, because I think it's supposed to be kind of emotional, and I think it just needed like a little more development before we got to that point. But I thought this was a ton of fun. This is following Yuji Itadori, who is a high school student, and he's supernaturally fast and strong, and he gets into a situation with some of his friends where he ends up consuming a cursed object and becoming cursed himself, and then he gets whisked away to a school for jujutsu sorcerers, who are the people who kind of keep humanity safe from curses. And so he has this whole adventure, he makes some new friends, and I just thought this was really entertaining. I read this just like, was it yesterday afternoon? Might have been yesterday afternoon, and I thought this was like And I just like tore through it. It was really entertaining and funny. I really like Yuji. I think that he's an entertaining protagonist because he's very like act first, think later. So you're constantly seeing him make terrible decisions and then having to deal with the consequences of that. And I personally think that's really interesting to follow a character like that. I also really like his friends, the characters that he meets when he gets to this new school. I think that the dynamic between the three of them is really interesting. You have, what's his name? Fushiguro, who is very kind of straight-laced, by the books kind of a dude. And then Nobara, who is also new, along with Yuji. And she's kind of like vain, but I don't know. She's like very like cheerful and almost not quite a warm character, not like super friendly, but she's just very cheerful and also kind of weirdly vain. And I don't know exactly how to describe her, but I found her really entertaining. I was afraid at first that I wasn't going to like her because this kind of vanity element was very much at the forefront, and she is one of the only two female characters in the book. But I really liked her by the end of this. I think that she kind of grows on you across the couple of chapters that she's in. And then the last character we get is Gojo, who is the teacher, and I really like him. I think he's quite a popular character. I don't know a whole lot about the series, obviously, but I think I've seen a lot of people like cosplaying him and stuff. But I immediately like him. I think he's my favorite character so far because he's very much like the chaotic dad friend, and I found him like very entertaining and very funny. So I don't know how many times I can tell you that something is funny and entertaining, but apparently it's a lot because I've just realized I said that like a ton of times here. So that's everything that I read in April, and I know that this is probably a little bit rambly, probably pretty short, but regardless, I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and if you did, I hope you'll consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting every Tuesday and Saturday, so there is more content coming soon, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.